Its message is simple. Invest in our youth's education now, or pay the cost to incarcerate them later. That will create economic chaos. Today, it's our privilege to discuss the important work of the Austin Project. This request for a coordinated effort in our community to invest in prevention, humanly speaking, is brought to us and to our attention by a first guest who is the driving force behind the Austin Project, Walt Rostow, serving as a distinguished public servant during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations, now teaching at the University of Texas. We are also pleased to have joining us today Emily Vargas Adams of CDAN, Family Resource Center in Austin, and we welcome you both.
Thank you.
I need to find out, Emily, whether I pronounced that correctly.
Just fine. Sedan Family Resource Center stands for Center for Development, Education, and Nutrition, and we focus on prenatal education, early childhood development, and parenting education. We're serving throughout the Austin-Travis County area. We have program replications in some other sites in the state.
And this is one of a number of groups that are part of the Austin Project.
Yes, although my participation is as a volunteer on the task force and the board of directors, rather than as an agency representative. We're trying to look at need, not at agency needs.
All right. And Walt, let's go right into the Austin Project. This is an umbrella organization, it sounds like, that is focusing upon this matter of prevention with the young.
Yes, it started when my wife and I decided to turn to something domestic and important and see if we could make a contribution. And we asked the question, why have we made no progress or deteriorated in the inner cities since Watts blew up in 1965, which is almost 30 years ago, when a great deal of money, and even more than that, a great deal of devoted effort has gone into the work in the cities. And we came away with a whole set of reasons for it, but which would be, but I think the outcome is what you're interested in. We came away with a strategy for turning the inner cities around in this country. Mm-hmm. And it involves a few fundamental principles. Most of our resources have gone into damage prevention, and they are also scattered like buckshot. There's no critical mass and purpose in them because there's no strategy. And therefore, the first principle is to develop a strategy of prevention rather than damage control.
Okay, and in the city of Austin, your focus is this area at this point?
Yes, the focus it's for the country and it's for Austin. Mm-hmm. The second principle is continuity from prenatal care, where Emily begins, to the workforce, roughly from prenatal care to the age of 25.
I see.
And
a
so
coordinated strategy for that age group.
That's right.
All right.
Third principle is you must get the effort of prevention up to the scale of the problem. At the moment, there is in Austin some really quite brilliant institutions working on prevention, but the resources put behind them at a time when so much effort is going to damage control and prisons and all the rest is not sufficient to turn the city around.
Okay, so that's in a sense what you mean by damage control, the prison system.
Well, there's other examples of it. Let me give you one that's very close to Emily's work, and she could do it more vividly. But when a child is born underweight, let's say 2 pounds, we devote the ablest medical people, most devoted medical people, to salvaging that human being. There's always cost in it, but if you have the pregnant mother come into a prenatal clinic and dealt with properly in her first 3 months of pregnancy, you can lower that the low-weight births and lower the cost.
Okay, so this is your understanding of damage control. You take the child or young person after it's, in a sense, too late to have done it right in the first place.
We can do a great deal on a treatment or remedial level, and always in a city like Austin, we must have a good grid of treatment centers, treatment programs, at every stage of people's lives, from infancy to the elderly. But if we want to make a difference in the long-term projections of human misery and cost, we're going to have to invest in preventing some of the very high-cost later treatments that are going to be required. At the present time, we have a very low utilization of prenatal care. Amongst our teenagers, 17 years of age and younger, 47% do not or do receive early and sustained prenatal care. That means that we have about half who are not. The number of low-weight births who come out of such lack of care is really quite astounding. We need to have early and sustained prenatal care, and this requires both the provision of enough prenatal health care places in the clinics and private doctors, but also home outreach to many who are otherwise not going to go into the services.
Well, let's take the span that you're talking about, from the prenatal care up through mid-20s. And each one of these stages, you have the sort of the turning point, it sounds like, that you either have the ounce of prevention that offsets 5 pounds of cure later, but just think about, for instance, I think Head Start would be an example of that, would it not?
Of course, right.
As a child gets older?
Maybe we could outline a few of the points of intervention.
All right.
One is prenatal care and home outreach and education. The next would be at the time of delivery and shortly after delivery, finding those children who are delayed, either severely or mildly, and ensuring that there is adequate home outreach and education in the homes for early childhood prevention.
And as we move forward?
And as we move forward, we come to child care. And there it's a question of quantity and quality. And quality has many subheadings. We need to expand Head Start tremendously, and there are many very fine child care centers that need to expand their services in our area. We also need to have wraparound services and good, smooth transition from child care and from the home into the schools. And so we've proposed work with the schools for it, school-based health care centers, various types of wraparound services such that children are not on the streets after school without care.
Okay, this is while they're in school. All right, and early school.
And definitely superb parenting education for all parents in our community, from birth on through the school years, with the schools playing a fundamentally important role.
Now, what about the teenage years?
Well, this is the view we take is that we must try to widen out the options that the teenager and even the pre-teenager views as realistic in terms of his or her life. If you look at the pathology that we're trying to cope with, of teenage pregnancies, low-weight births, dropouts, crime, gangs, and so on, they all stem mainly from the weakness of the families on the one hand, and from the fact that these young people do not see as realistic a future out in the big world. They hit a ceiling, and they are discouraged, but they're full of vigor. It's not apathy, but...
Now, you're talking about the dropout possibility here.
Well, it's more than that. It's simply that quite early, they get the notion that that big world of high tech and all of that out there, the exciting things they see on television, are not for them. And our job is to try to bring together the private sector and the AISD, which is already beginning to work together, but much more, with much more determination and scale, so that these young people feel that the world out there is for them. And it's to change a vision of their options and give them a sense that if there is something worth working for, and if they work, there's going to be a response. And a great many of the things we'll be doing, in one sense, there are two big parts to our effort. One of them is Emily's, which is from 0 to 8. And the other is the widening of the options by a whole set of devices, which I won't go into here, but perhaps the most important is a sense that the world of good jobs, good incomes, chances to let their creative capacities come into play fully is for them. And that's not an impossible thing to do, but it does mean that the universities must reach in and help the colleges and the private sector.
Okay, so as you get up the upper age groups, then the options have to expand both in terms of the approaches and I would think too that one of the things that you're talking about is bringing together all of the groups in town here. You've got, just name some of the folks who are working with you, just to see that cross section.
Oh, you mean, well, we have a marvelous board of directors you know, Barbara Jordan, Bob Inman, Larry Temple, and Bill Cunningham, and Rocky Medrano, who works with the gangs, and one of the leaders, Robert Mendoza, in the Hispanic community, a young and brilliant leader in the African American community, Jeff Trevelyan, and my co-chairman are Wilhelmina Delco and Senator Barrientos. And they have been very supportive, but very substantive when we've met. But the heart of the operation from day to day is the task force, which produced this big report, of which we have a few copies left if people want them, and they can tell.
It's in the library too, I understand.
It's in all the libraries, the public libraries and the university library. And now we're turning. I think we have a good plan. I think the strategy is correct, and it's being recognized around the country as being important. But now we have to make that plan come alive. And we have this group totally pro bono.
Okay, and you have no paid staff. I mean,
no paid staff. But we meet, and what's given us strength, and it will be so in the operational phase, I'm confident, as it was in doing the plan. What gives us strength is that quite independently we converged on this strategy. But it demands that we get the whole community in it, not merely the public officials who are elected, who are very important and remain important, but the universities, the private sector, the churches.
Okay, and I think that's the point at which we want to pick up in terms of what is the place for the nonprofits, particularly the churches. And we have to take a short break, but we'll come back and continue our discussion on the Austin Project.
Serving Austin means serving you. Each day, Austin Metropolitan Ministries is religion in action, providing affordable housing, caring for the elderly, marching against hunger, and much more. AMM promotes understanding, cooperation, and social involvement. So when we ask for your help, we're really asking to help you, Austin. To find out how you can help Austin Metropolitan Ministries help Austin through its member organizations, just call 472-7627.
We're back on Austin Faith Dialogue, discussing an important report on our youth future called the Austin Project. And today we've been joined by two people with very important views on the issue. Walt Rostow, the driving force behind the Austin Project, and Emily Vargas Adams of Sedan, a family resource center. As we were discussing before, there's a variety of community groups working with the Austin Project, and let's focus just for a moment on the church. The religious community, synagogues, persons of any religious conviction can support this in what way?
Well, we already have many members and representatives of churches working with us, and we invite many more. There are various levels of participation. One is directly in working on subcommittees of the task force on important areas of mutual concern. Homelessness, questions of need in families, child development, school dropout, all sorts of areas that are terribly important. Comprehensive database for health and human services in the Austin-Travis County area, which is a great interest, too, of many churches. So we have collaboratively a lot of interest simply in working together as mutual volunteers. But there's another level, which we wrote about in our Austin Project First Phase Plan, which is really quite an intriguing one. We studied, why do we not have enough collaboration and cooperation in our city? Why are people feeling so isolated and not involved, not participating? And what is it that the churches can do, amongst other important organizations, qua organization, in our city? And one of the things that we suggested was that churches pair up. For a Presbyterian church, for example, in one part of town, to pair up with a Presbyterian church in another part of town and do collaborative projects. We do something for your neighborhood, you do something for our neighborhood. What are our needs? We study our needs together. We then make our short list of priorities, and we work on our areas of importance, and we do it in collaboration,
Okay.
in communion.
All right. So do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would. I think that following on from what Emily said, the churches have an extraordinarily important part because we can work very hard, and Emily and her center can work very hard not to provide enough prenatal clinics. But it's going to take the churches and the families to get the young pregnant women into those clinics on time. There is no aspect of the work we do from one end to the other which doesn't involve trying to involve the families. We're all, Emily and the Kosmetsky Foundation and all of us, and the Haag Foundation, are all working to get strengthen this Dove Spring school and the clinic attached to it. And the city council has voted some money. But the heart of that effort has got to be a reaching out from a social service base to get the family involved. And the churches can greatly help at every stage in encouraging and indicating the extraordinary importance of not leaving these children as isolated individuals at a time when they need to be part of a social structure. And so that's the one function. That's one function. The second is volunteering for habitat work or other functions. We need a lot of volunteers, but they must enter in an organized way into the institutions we have. The third I would mention is symbolized. It's one of a good many self-help projects, but a very interesting one, of the Reverend Sterling Lands and the Greater Calvary Baptist Church. And he's got a rites of passage program to try to deal with the teenagers, to give them a sense of a rooting in their own culture, their own religion, a sense of dignity, and it involves working together, and it has a very important component, which is teaching them computer literacy, which is extraordinary. In this age, it may make all the difference between entering the workforce at a very low level of technology and income, or a more promising one.
So that would be an example of how a
church is
given
directly-
congregation could be part of this larger
He's
process.
very much part of it, and on the prevention side. So there are many roles here, but you know, at one stage in the report, I stopped and we'd had this, I was summarizing, and my colleagues had written a great deal about the technical aspects of this, whether it's prenatal care or linking up the business community with the workforce, or getting a development bank going, which Bill Renfro of Bank One and Joe Matlock of Franklin are working on. And I stopped and I said, but you know, really, this is not about technical things. This is about hope and community and family. And in all those three fundamental directions, elements in the equation, hope and community and family, the churches can play an extraordinary
Okay.
part.
Well, I think it's at that point that I have to share with you a little bit a perspective from the standpoint of a pastor working in the community. And I could see that the churches are already involved in a variety of public service, community service efforts. But I think one of the gifts that the religious community has to offer the larger community, and perhaps through the Austin Project, is this hope. Because there's a sense of hopelessness out there today, that these problems are just too big. We're being overwhelmed, suffocated by them. The prison systems are out of control, and it seems like our society is out of control in so many ways. And to say, not just in the abstract, that there's hope, but that there is hope in community building, that everybody can have a part in, and that it's going to pay off. And that you can hope within, say, by the end of the century, some things will have changed in Austin that will not only impact us locally, but have some as an example for others elsewhere.
Right.
Now, that's the kind of thing that we're in the hope business. We're hope freaks,
Right.
as it were.
Well, you
And-
know, we really have a 5-year window of opportunity.
Okay,
we
you're
really
talking in
do
terms
have.
of-
We do have hope.
What will have happened in 5
Let
years?
me tell you, because
Just
this
tell
is,
us.
I
the
came
vision.
I come at this problem from a rather odd perspective because I've devoted a good deal of my professional life to helping developing countries in Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. And if we work at this steadily for 5 years, I do believe we will see not the end of the line, not the ultimate goal achieved, but you'll begin to see a subsidence in these terrible data of pathology that we and abnormality that we find. And that's a moment that I've seen in countries. I can name almost the week in which the South Koreans, who are the poorest kids on the block, decided, by God, we're going to make it. And that's when they began to see, from a number of directions, that small things were happening for the better. And I think that within 5 years of serious, sustained effort, we can see the beginnings of that turnaround. And then it will take, let's say, a generation, further work, to get these neighborhoods into the mainstream of American life. But it's totally different once a community concludes, by God, we're going to make it, than the time before. And I cannot tell you the respect I have for the people who've gone on working without any light at the end of the tunnel. And they're devoted people in this city who have my total respect for what they have done and are doing. And if we all work together, I think their efforts will prove to have been the road out.
Which was one of your points on what is the role of nonprofits. And there are many nonprofit agencies, just as churches, with important programs, which have excellent beginnings, some of them technically very well done, but they haven't gone to scale. In every area of our report, we talk about what would going to scale mean. How many thousand people of such and such variety need to be served in what ways? So we have projections of how big going to scale is per area. The role of the churches, the role of the volunteer, the role of the nonprofit agencies, the role of government, which is huge, are all very important within this.
But let's think about what going to scale means within a 5-year period. If that begins to happen, what could we expect? Here we are in the year 1992 by 1997.
We hope, for example, in prenatal health care that we will be as close to 100% as possible, and we have projections of what will be needed to put that into place. Secondly, for children who are developmentally delayed or at high risk of delay, we have the projections as to what it will be required to go to 100% on that. We hope to get to at least 98% of immunizations by the age of 2. We're currently at 40% of the children at the age of 2 immunized, which is terrible.
All right.
And we have other projections in every area that has to do with everything from teenage pregnancy through to school dropout. There are so many areas where we have projections out for what can and needs to be done. The fact is that I think the will to do it is coming into place. We have received tremendous enthusiasm from so many sectors, not just the ones where you would expect it, like the nonprofit agencies, but also individuals who have never volunteered before, never come forward, and said, I need to do that. I need to be, for example, a volunteer parent educator, and I can make a difference in 2 families' lives, and that will be a tremendous contribution, and it would be.
Bit by bit, individual by individual. Let's keep it going, though, in terms of the overall picture. Do you want to add to this 5-year scenario, Walt?
Well, no, I just think it's my best estimate as a development economist, and I've earned my wound stripes at it. But I've also had the tremendous satisfaction of seeing the change in the faces of people when they suddenly perceive that, by God, we're going to make it, and that their hopes and their expectations change. And this is the dream that I have of seeing that happen in my hometown. And I want to add that you perhaps cannot get a sense here, unless you've worked at this on a national level, as to how important it would be for Austin to make this strategy come to life, because it would be the first town to show that the problem can be turned around. And there are a lot of people now aware of the plan, and we must do it for our own people, our own community, and this gracious city which is endangered. But we have if we can get hold of this, we can make a great contribution to the country, because this plan of ours, done with this small group of devoted people I'm proud to work with, is going all over the country and even to Europe now.
Well, if we focus on the home front,
Yes.
The anomaly of Austin has a higher level of education in the populace, more people buying more books in this town, that kind of thing on the one hand, and also leading the state and among the top of the nation in teenage pregnancies.
That's
right.
What an anomaly.
Yes, it is.
And it seems to me that we have this hope, and we also have this realism about just
right.
how tough a nut it is going to be to crack.
That's right.
And I think that one of the things that in our closing minute here, I'd like to make sure that folks know is your the phone number that they can get a hold of you to make their own individual responses. They're so moved. The 471-4757.
And they can get the plan in the libraries around, and we have some of the copies we can make available if they call 471-4757.
Okay. I'd like to say, too, that I'm sorry that we have to bring our discussion to a close at this point, but it's with the hope that the Austin Project serves as a creative catalyst to the greater metropolitan area in providing support for the younger generation. It's with that certainty that those participating on our program today have contributed to the process, and so our thanks to Emily Vargas Adams and to Walt Rostow for being with us. On behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, I'm Richard Thompson, thanking you for joining us, inviting you to be with us again next week for our next edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Till then, peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.